A man violently slices open his own leg, forcing a rusty piece of scrap metal deep into his bloody flesh. Rapid cuts of twisted steel, grotesque faces, and disturbing acts flash across the screen in a dizzying blur. What on earth is going on?
That is the exact nightmare Shinya Tsukamoto throws us into with his 1989 cyberpunk cult horror classic,
Tetsuo the Iron Man,
The director tosses linear storytelling straight out the window,
drowning us in abstract symbols, relentless industrial noise, and chaotic visuals.
To make sense of this insanity, let's piece the story together chronologically.
It all starts with that same stranger mutilating his own thigh to embed a metal rod inside himself. Moments later, he steps into the street and gets mowed down by a speeding car. The driver,
An ordinary salaryman, panics alongside his girlfriend at the sight of the bloody body.
desperate to cover their tracks. The couple hauls the corpse into a dense forest and dumps it out of sight. But the horror is far from over. Out in the dark woods, the victim still clings to a terrifying sliver of life. His cold, unblinking glare somehow arouses the guilty pair, prompting them to engage in a passionate encounter right before his dying eyes. It seems his disturbing urge to slice open his own skin and force raw steel inside springs from a twisted, erotic high. Many view this stranger as a true metal fetishist, a man driven by a sickening fixation on cold, inanimate machinery.
At its core, a fetish is an intense obsession with non-sexual objects. But this fanatic takes that dark desire to a horrifying, unthinkable extreme.
And as he breathes his last, that devotion curdles into a malignant curse aimed directly at the man who ran him down. Back in his everyday life, the unfortunate driver starts paying the price. A sharp, jagged metal object suddenly sprouts straight out of his cheek. When his phone rings, the voice on the line chillingly repeats an eerie greeting over and over without stopping. His sanity begins to shatter. At a bus stop, an ordinary woman transforms into a grotesque mutant, relentlessly hunting him through the streets.
The camera breaks into frantic stop-motion animation,
mirroring our protagonist's violent spiral into complete madness. Before he can process reality,
he plunges into a feverish nightmare.
Seeing his lover there, but something is horribly wrong. A massive mechanical tube protrudes from her lower body like a twisted industrial weapon. In this surreal nightmare, she brutally torments him with her own bizarre metallic urges, turning pleasure into pure physical agony. Just as quickly, the scene shifts. The lovers share an intimate moment, this time appearing completely normal, like any ordinary couple. They embrace until total exhaustion, pulling back only when she winces from a sudden sharp pain. Afterwards, they sit down for a meal, but the tension quickly mounts again as the salaryman grows visibly aroused, watching his girlfriend caress a metal fork at the dinner table. They throw themselves back into passion, only to freeze in shock as his body succumbs further to the iron infection. Between his legs, flesh gives way to heavy machinery.
A massive whirring drill bit takes shape,
yet staring at her lover's
horrifying transformation.
The woman shows no terror. Instead, she is strangely captivated, demanding to see his mutated form. Her brief panic isn't fueled by disgust for his grotesque appearance, but by the sheer physical threat of the sharp steel. The protagonist, who initially tried to isolate himself to protect her, snaps the moment his deformity is exposed. His rage isn't the despair of betrayal. It's a primal frenzy born from suppressed desire and overwhelming shame. Stripped of all restraint and self-defense, he lets raw animalistic instincts take complete command. A violent struggle erupts between the two. He tries to overpower her,
while she frantically dodges the deadly metal blade.
She manages to plunge a knife into his neck, sending him crashing down as the roaring mechanism comes to a dead halt. But in a bizarre twist, as he lies bleeding, the woman begins caressing his metallic body once more. Lost in a feverish trance, they give in to their twisted desires until the drill surges back to life, ending her existence in a matter of seconds. So, what does this relentlessly spinning drill actually symbolize? Most obviously, it represents raw destructive lust, unbridled and untamed. Blinded by impulse, the man ignores the deadly harm he inflicts on his partner, driven entirely by possession and urge. The relentless spread of iron across his skin mirrors the complete decay of his mind and sanity. His lover spirals down the exact same path. Even after witnessing his horrific physical breakdown,
she repeatedly begs him not to abandon her.
pleading to behold his monstrous iron form and claiming she can endure the lethal power of his transformation. It leaves us wondering, were they chasing ultimate pleasure through extreme taboo? Or was this entire nightmare spawned from overwhelming guilt? A guilt so suffocating that it completely broke their minds,
filling their world with twisted hallucinations and dark, deviant behavior?
Could this horrific iron takeover simply be the visual manifestation of a severe psychotic break? Did he actually murder his girlfriend with a common knife, only to construct a mechanical nightmare in his shattered mind to escape reality?
Just when we think we're finally grasping the story,
the film drags us deeper into absolute madness. Tetsuo is now almost entirely encased in raw metal. Strangely, his lover remains alive, mouth-fed a bizarre, slimy fuel directly from him. Grotesque faces and disorienting cuts bombard the screen, but one sinister figure haunts him relentlessly. The dead fanatic, he stalks the salaryman at every turn, acting like an omnipresent curse or a twisted alter ego. The second half turns into a frantic struggle as this vengeful spirit seeks to consume the salaryman's body completely. Screeching steel, pounding industrial beats, and strobing cityscapes clash in a violent sensory overload. Eventually, the entity corners him, but instead of fleeing, Tetsuo lunges forward,
gripping his tormentor tight.
Their rusted bodies entwine, slowly fusing into a single mass. For a brief second, their human spirits stand face to face in a surreal moment of shared understanding. The salaryman expresses a chilling sense of relief, while the ghost urges him to join forces and transform the entire world into iron, fused into a monstrous titan of steel.
Two faces locked into one terrifying machine.
The nightmare reaches its climax. What on earth did we just witness? Even after piecing the plot together, the film leaves us drowning in unsettling questions. First, the takeover feels like a dark metaphor for a human mind, decaying into total numbness. The encroaching metal could be a physical manifestation of suffocating guilt, dangerous desire, or a mind losing its grip on reality. Where does morality end, and at what point do we lose our humanity? What went through his mind when he ran down a stranger? What was he thinking when he chose to cover up the crime, or when he embraced his lover beside a dying man? Does crossing that moral line warp a person's perception of reality forever? Are we simply watching a man descend into utter insanity, conjuring a cybernetic hell out of sheer guilt? Or looking at it through a supernatural lens? Perhaps the zealot's vengeful spirit is entirely real, enacting retribution through his dark faith by turning his killer into the very iron he worships. He haunts the couple's every waking moment, forcing the girlfriend to pay the ultimate price for their shared sins. Is it ultimate karmic retribution?
A ruthless indictment of human guilt?
Tetsuo doesn't rely on ghosts or demons to strike terror into its audience. Instead, it turns the human body itself into the ultimate horror weapon. Right from the opening frames, we watch in agony as rusted scrap metal gets jammed deep into torn flesh, opening the floodgates to a grotesque nightmare where cold steel sprouts directly from living skin. This is pure, unadulterated body horror, a genre built on visceral physical brutality like forced surgery, severed limbs, flayed skin, and grotesque mutilations. While these terrifying concepts have haunted folklore across cultures for centuries, body horror didn't truly invade cinema until the 1970s, sparking a wave of iconic films centered on bizarre afflictions and horrifying physical mutations. Arriving right on the heels of this movement,
Tetsuo pushes bodily deformation to its absolute limit.
Between disturbing intimate encounters and distorted phallic machinery, like deadly spinning drills and mechanical hoses, the film forces us to face a chilling question. Were people of that era blindly ignoring the risks of unchecked desire and sexual health? Even though the movie debuted in 1989,
a time when Japan was rapidly modernizing, its claustrophobic, grimy architecture feels strangely detached from reality.
The director deliberately zeroes in on signs reading New World multiple times, dropping subtle hints of overwhelming American influence. It's a calculated move, drawing striking parallels to Western cultural shifts seen in cinematic classics, like Kurosawa's Stray Dog. So why make cold iron the driving plague? When the metal enthusiast demands that they join forces to transform the entire planet into steel, he effectively declares himself the figurehead of this relentless new industrial world order.
This dark transition cuts directly to the core of Japan's Showa era,
which spanned from 1926 to 1989, the exact year of the film's release. The early Showa era was defined by immense hardship, wartime trauma, and widespread devastation.
Yet, out of that suffering emerged a distinct cultural identity,
Deeply ingrained in the nation's DNA, where vintage architecture, classic stories, and retro designs are still cherished to this day.
But history tells a broader story.
In the second half of the Showa era, Japan collides head-on with Western influences, overwhelmingly driven by American culture. Classic wooden architecture gives way to sterile concrete structures. Traditional attire gets swapped for sharp suits, while the raw, chaotic energy of heavy metal, with its screeching distorted guitars and deafening roar, floods the airwaves.
Standing right at this cultural crossroad,
Director Tsukamoto channels a bittersweet nostalgia for an era slipping away. Yet he doesn't just launch a mindless attack on modernization. On one hand, he mocks the aggressive urbanization and concrete jungle taking over his homeland. The fanatic who hungers to turn the entire world into iron represents the cold economic machine driving late Showa Japan, a system that boomed financially while quietly eroding traditional values. On the other hand,
Tsukamoto's meticulous visual style reveals a deep fascination with these modern Western aesthetics.
he doesn't dismiss this new world as wrong or twisted. He simply aches over the tragic impossibility of preserving the beauty of the past. Ultimately, Tetsuo the Iron Man stands as a complex, chaotic nightmare born from social anxiety and artistic obsession.
So what is this movie truly trying to say? Is it an allegory for toxic lust,
A terrifying descent into psychological madness, or a surreal eulogy for an era lost forever?